So, hello everybody, and welcome to this funding advice session about access support for funding applications. My name's Yvonne, and I'm the fundraising manager for Creative Black Country, or CBC. I'm a white, middle-aged woman with brown, wavy, shoulder-length hair. I wear glasses, and I'm working from my front room at home. Thank you for joining us this morning for this event. We're pleased and excited to be joined by our friend Jenny from Curiosity Productions, who's going to lead this morning's session. We're also joined by Tanisha and Tom, who are our BSL interpreters. So they're pinned so they can always be seen, and they will alternate as we go through the session. I know most of you know who we are, but just in case you're new to CBC, we are a creative people and places programme. We're funded mostly by the Arts Council and other funders. Our mission is making the most of the Black Country through arts, culture and creativity. And we work with communities in Dudley, Sandwell, Walsall and Wolverhampton. As well as fundraising for Creative Black Country, I also help some of our community groups with their fundraising, and I host this funding network. So I'm going to hand over to Jenny in a moment. She's going to run through a presentation and some slides. We'll have a little quick 5-minute comfort break around 5 to 11 o'clock. Then we'll have some questions if people want to have some questions, and we will finish at 11:30. So I hope that all sounds okay. So I'd like to hand over to Jenny, please, at Curiosity.
Hello, everybody. I'm just going to share screen, but then I'll probably share and then stop sharing because I'd like to get to know all of you as well. So I'm just going to do it just because I like to check it's all working. So how is that for everybody? Can everyone see some colourful dots and something that says access support for funding applications? You can all see that. Brilliant. Okay. And that hasn't caused any issues with seeing the interpreters. That's all good. Brilliant. I've got some hands up. Okay, brilliant. I'm just going to get my notes up. So I'm actually going to stop sharing for a moment and just invite you to introduce yourselves in a moment. First of all, introduce myself. Also just to say, if you have any questions throughout this whole process, if you want to do the hand up icon or wave, and hopefully Yvonne might notice you, or put something into the chat. I probably won't see it, but I'm hoping that Yvonne will pick that up and shut me up for a minute so that we can have conversations. So do that. So just to let you know about me, my name is Jenny Martin, formerly known as Jenny Smith. Although my legal name change was a while back, I've decided to use it in work as well now. And I am a white woman with blonde to greying hair that is up at the moment, and I have a very busy background bookcase with lots of books and crafts materials and things like that, because I run a company called Curiosity Productions, and as well as doing training and mentoring and support and things like this, we also produce a huge range of projects, events and activities, which include festivals, events, children's holiday activities. So I always have lots of stuff around. So that's the random background. So I have provided access support for Arts Council applications previously, and I have a lovely person here I've worked with, Frank, who's going to maybe chat a little bit later about his experience of that as well. And I know there's other people in the space. Zakia has had access support from someone else, so we'll have a chat together about that, anyone who's had those experiences as well. But yeah, it would be lovely if anyone would like to introduce themselves. You can either speak, or I'll kind of go around the screen in a second, or you can just pop it into the chat if you want to pop it into the chat. Your introduction. So I know Yvonne did a few first, but just to let me know who you are, and also what you might want to get from this session in terms of learning about access support for funding applications. So I'm gonna, if there's anyone who'd like to go first, Omar, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
So my name's Omar. My surname is this. I'm a man. I'm a Pakistani man. I'm Muslim. I'm profoundly deaf. And I work for DeafScope for about 5 years now. And we look at how to improve accessibility and how to sort of learn more about applying for funding with the Arts Council, because we do a lot of things with VV and events for the deaf community, and sort of trying to bring the hearing and deaf community together. So I want to learn a bit more about how I can do that.
Yeah. Anyone else want to go next, or I'll pick on you? Is it Sylvia? Is that how you say your name?
Hi, yeah, sorry, my camera is off. I don't know why it's not working. But yeah, I'm Sylvia. I run a small community organization called Reach Foresta. And we support community in Darlaston, but also Polish women living in Walsall. I'm neurodivergent, so completing funding applications can be a challenge. So that's why I'm here.
Sally-Ann?
Hi everyone, I'm Sally-Ann Rock, and I'm a freelance access support worker. So I'm here to meet people really who might need access support. Yeah, that's it really. Thanks.
Thanks, Sally-Ann. Yeah, hopefully I'll get everything right then, because Sally-Ann probably knows more than I do. So please jump in, Sally-Ann, if you have anything to add. Frank, would you like to introduce yourself?
Is that me unmuted? Yeah. You can hear me? Yeah. Okay. Frank Chamberlain from Bridal Hill Community Forum, Cultural Consortium. We do anything under the umbrella of cultural, creative things in Bridal Hill with whatever funding we can find, just to bring different communities into the light and let them do their thing. You know, we don't like doing things to other people. We like them to do things to us, if you like. That's our philosophy. You know, show us your talents. And thanks to Access Support, because I'm severely sight impaired, my life has got a lot easier lately. But I'll talk about that in the near future.
And Julie?
Hello there. I'm so glad that I chose this wallpaper because it looks quite good, doesn't it? I don't know how to change the background. So my name's Julie. I'm a white, incredibly beautiful, very young lady. I look obviously about 21, even though I'm in my late 50s. I've got blonde hair, and I would describe myself as a supermodel. I'm wearing glasses at the moment, but because my eyesight is failing me. That's a little secret, because obviously supermodels have to be perfect. I work for Dudley Council. I'm a community development worker, so I am here on behalf of my team. We do a lot of work with Creative Black Country, as we work with a lot of community organisations across the borough, volunteers, you know, non-profit organisations, individuals, anything that comes in the community we work with. And obviously a lot of the times they ask us is about any sort of help, any funding help, any helps like yourselves, like with access, like the interpreter, for instance. So I've just put in the chat, Omar, my contact details, because I'd love to catch up with you and meet with you to see how a team we could all support each other moving forward. And I think that's it in a nutshell. I will turn my camera off though, because I've got two screens, so if I look at the camera, you won't see my face, so I'm going to turn my screen off. Hope that's okay.
Absolutely fine. Thank you, Julie. So Sakia, would you like to introduce yourself? Oh, you're muted still.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Hey everyone, I'm Sakia and I run an organisation called It's a Family Thing, which is a CIC. And we work with children aged 5 to 12, providing culture trip memories as well as children's-led activities, and we signpost families and support the families as much as we possibly can. I have been lucky to receive access support, and I will be able to be talking about that later, and it has made my life a lot much easier. And I am a brown skin girl with black hair.
Thanks. Who haven't we had? Alf here?
Hello. My camera's off at the moment. My name's Alf. My full name is Althea. I'm the founder of a company called CIC, which is a not-for-profit organisation that works in Birmingham, Black Country, supporting young people and families with disability or a health condition. So I've just come to find out more information. If you can't see me, I'm black. I'm dark skinned, female, early 40s. Yeah, that's it really. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Al.
All right.
Just been asked if I can turn myself up. I'm just moving fortunately my headphones are slightly broken, so I'm using a different microphone. Can everyone hear me okay? Is that better?
Yeah, you were just a little bit quiet
Okay.
For me, quieter
Okay.
than other people speaking, so I didn't know whether you could turn yourself up.
Okay. Is that all right now?
That's a bit better, thank you.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so thank you for all introducing yourselves. I will start my presentation. So yeah, just going to share again. So I can't see any of you anymore. So if you do have any questions, you want to stop me at any point, please pop it in the chat or raise your hand, and hopefully Yvonne will spot that and flag it for me. So just to let you know what we're going to cover today, I'm going to talk about what access support is available should you need it when applying for funding. So it's very specifically around that. I'm going to talk very briefly about access to work. I am not an expert, but I just want to mention that and flag that. I'm going to talk about access support offered by a range of key funders, the kind of big ones that you might know about, and what each of them do or don't provide, and then go in a little bit more detail about specifically about how access support works with Arts Council England. So that's what I've got most experience in, and obviously with Creative Black Country that's probably a focus for a lot of you as well. So that's what we're going to cover today. So first of all, who can get access support? It's available for deaf, disabled, neurodivergent people who experience barriers when applying for funds or using the services of funders. And it's also for those experiencing poor short or long-term physical or mental health. Most funders won't ask for proof, so they consider self-ID valid, so they don't ask you to show them your any kind of medical confirmation or anything specific that you may have. They just ask you to let them know what barriers you experience. And so generally the support that is available is a support worker, and that could be different for every person. But the role of a support worker is to remove barriers for someone applying for funding, and it has to be tailored to your needs. There's no one size fits all approach. There's not a specific way that access support is done or happens or who does it. So the kind of things that you might get with access support is note taking and interpreting ideas to write up answers, helping to process application questions and forms and understand what's in there. They're not always clear. It could be British Sign Language interpretation and transcription into a written form. It could be helping to navigate application systems. Some of them are worse than others. And it could also be signposting to other resources or asking the funder for additional support as well. So it can be a range of things. In terms of, it's not an equal offer across different funders. Not all funders will pay specifically for a support worker or any kind of specific needs, but it's always worth asking them if they do, even if they're not advertising it clearly on their website. It's always worth asking what access support they provide, because it might just be that they're not very good at communicating it. They're getting better, but yeah, it's not always obvious. Most of the bigger funders have an online application process, and some of these systems are more accessible or less accessible than others. I think Grantium is quite infamous for being not accessible. But they are also very good at supporting access. So that's how they balance it. Some funders will accept filmed applications, but not many. That kind of practice is more common with contracts and commissions and that kind of thing, accepting applications in different formats. But most of the funders, I think, because they have to have a very specific process in terms of how they assess the funding, find it very difficult to accept anything in a different format other than their specific system. So just to be clear, support work is not bid writing. The support worker's responsibility is to assist the person to articulate their idea in their authentic voice. So it's not about providing, writing a bid for somebody. It is about enabling that person to do it. So that's really specific, and they're all very specific and clear about that, all of the funders. And support workers, so they can find the information you need. So if you need to find something out, like specific details, like travel times or costs for things, or if that's the thing that you need support with, then that can be done. But but they are not allowed to kind of provide the answers to the main questions about what your project is and what you're applying for, or make decisions for you if they're providing access support. So that's important to know. So very briefly then, access to work. Some of you may know more about this than others. I am not going to claim to be an expert. What I do know is it's quite a long and complex process. But there is some really useful information resources available on the Disability Arts Online website. I will be sharing these slides afterwards. If it's more accessible for you to access the links, I can do that in a separate email as well, because they will be embedded in a PDF. But yeah, the Disability Arts Online website has a brilliant whole section all around access to work, and there are sections on whether you're an employee, if you're self-employed, and if you're an employer. So there's some really great, very specific arts focused advice on there that's been commissioned by the Arts Council. So I highly recommend going and having a look at that. So most of what I put here is kind of an adaptation of what they've put, really. So just to be clear what access to work is, it's the Department for Work and Pensions resource that helps create a more accessible work environment. and the grants are to remove barriers that disabled people face in undertaking paid employment. So the key thing is it is available for self-employed people and employees, but there's the important thing with access to work. Some of it people get in difficulties around is the language used. So in the art sector we call ourselves freelancers, but freelancer means a different thing to the Department of Work and Pensions. So you need to make sure you say that you are self-employed. Because a freelancer for them is someone who moves from one employed contract of work to another. So it's a slightly different terminology. They also have very specific terminology about the different types of support workers. And it's much easier to get the support from them if you use their language. So you do have to do a bit of learning around that. There's really great help on that Disability Arts Online website. But the categories are sign language interpreter, communication support worker for deaf and deafblind people, lip speaker, note taker, re-speaker, so carer to help with physical mobility at work. They're really specific in terms of exactly what. So there's things like a travel buddy or a personal reader. They want really specific titles. So it's worth going into their list and using their language, and the access to work guide, that the link is there as well, that you'll get. That goes into loads and loads of detail, but there's some kind of overview information on that Disability Arts Online website. So the key thing around this is if you have access to work, it could be that your access to work covers the access support you need to make a funding application, but it might not. Some of the funders will say, we won't give you access support for anything that's covered by your access to work. So if you have access to work, you have to clarify why you might need additional support for their funding, because your access to work doesn't cover X, Y, Z. So I'm just kind of raising that, but also if you're not getting access to work and you feel like it could be something that could be helpful to you, definitely look on the Disability Arts Online website, and because it's really helpful, and it might be that you can find additional support more broadly as well. So yeah, that's all there. I can't promise it's a simple process, but it's definitely worth looking into. I'm going to go through most of the big funders, the most well-known funders basically, and let you know what funding each of them provide, and what access support, sorry, each of them provide. I'm not going to go into all their funding programs. That's a whole other thing. So the National Lottery Community Fund, I've started with them because actually they don't provide specific access bursaries to support writing applications. Everyone else I'm going to talk about does in some way, and I spoke to them because I couldn't find anything on their website, and they basically said that they advise you to contact them direct, and their advisors will talk through the application with you. So they do not, like all the others I'll talk about, provide a bursary to pay somebody to do access support. What they've said is there are BSL videos for each of their funds and PDF or Word copies available of all their grant applications information and their application forms. But they try and make their funding programs and their process as simple and as accessible as possible. So that's their approach. So I think if you find that you are experiencing barriers with their specific funds, what they advise is to get in touch with them, and someone will, they have got people who will be available and help and support you. There's some contact details there. As I said, you'll get all these slides, so you'll have all the links for how to contact them in all those different ways. But yeah, so they do not provide any specific access support, but they just say, please get in touch if you need support from them. Are there any questions so far? I feel like I've been chatting quite a while already. Nothing? Okay, I'll carry on. So National Lottery Heritage Fund, they do say that they cover the cost of any, they call it reasonable adjustments. This is another thing with language, isn't it? Most people call it access support. The National Lottery Heritage Fund, when you're asking them, what you're asking for is reasonable adjustments. And that's the term they use, and that's the page on their website. So it took me a bit of time to find that as well. But you have the link there now, so you know. So they will cover the cost of any reasonable adjustments, as they call it, including BSL interpretation, translator materials, or digital accessibility, which means, you know, navigating their online system essentially. So basically they just say that you need to contact them to discuss the type of support they can provide, and then go from there. So there isn't a specific process that they provide. They do encourage you to include access costs in your project budget, which I advise for all funding applications anyway, but they do flag that in there. And they've got a good practice guidance, so you can see the kind of thing when you get into that stage, you can see the kind of thing they're expecting you to apply and to add into your budget in terms of personal access costs. So yeah, no specific bursary or system. It is just get in touch with them and say that you need support, and then they'll work with you to work that out. So moving on, the rest of the funders generally have a specific pot of money that they provide. So Paul Hamlyn Foundation provide a bursary of up to £750 to support each stage of their application process. So like lots of trusts and foundations, they have an expression of interest stage, and then they have a full application stage. So they will provide up to £750 to support each stage. There is this is the bit where it gets a little bit ironic with access support. Quite a lot of the access support requests are online forms, which aren't necessarily as accessible, depending on what your access support needs are. They're fairly simple forms, but that doesn't make them accessible to everyone. But all of them do say get in touch. There's an email address and a phone number for Hamlyn Foundation. So if the online form link isn't accessible to you, they can work through it with you. But yeah, again, it's about them having a straightforward system. So they kind of need that information to get into that form in one way or another. So yeah, so the staff will help you to complete that. You basically just need to get in touch, let them know the type of access support you need, and then they'll ask you to confirm who is providing the support, and they'll ask for a quote. So they want to know a bit of a breakdown, which most of them do. So they want to know, you know, what the support's gonna be and how that breaks down. With Paul Hamlyn Foundation, the support worker will invoice Paul Hamlyn direct, so you don't need to get involved in managing that finance. They will ask you for the details of the support worker, and then they will invoice Paul Hamlyn direct. So yeah, and there's a link again. There's a link there for getting you more information about their access support bursary. Esme Fairburn, very similar, up to £500 from them. And again, they just say contact them to let them know you need access support. There's the contact details there on the slide. And we'll send you this through. If they kind of flag on their site that if you're they flag if you're neurodivergent. I imagine if whoever you are, if you're not sure what type of support you need to apply, they can put you in touch with a specialist organisation to discuss your needs. But they do specifically say if you're neurodivergent, you're not sure exactly what the type of support is, might be because you're not familiar with their application process, they can help you with that and help you work that out. And again, they have a expression of interest and then a full proposal stage. So they will support you at each stage. So you can apply again for access support if you get invited to the next stage. So that £500 is just to do the initial stage, and then there is another a lot of support if you go to the next stage. How are we doing? Does anybody have any questions? Anyone? No? Okay.
Nothing in there at the moment, Jenny.
Cool, thank you. I shall carry on. You have to just keep listening to me talking. So BFI, British Film Institute, they have a specific organisation that they work with called TAPE, Community Film and Music. So they have a specific contact system, a kind of online contact form and a phone number. So you can get in touch with them direct to say, I need you to help me write a BFI application. So it's a slightly different process with them. The important thing to do is check if you are looking at BFI funding, so that's the film funding, check about the deadline, because you need to get in touch as early as possible if you need access support, because they've obviously got to schedule you in, so that could take you longer. So do check those deadlines and try and get in touch as early as possible with TAPE to book yourself in for some of that support. So that's BFI. And then we're going to go into Arts Council England. I'm going to go into a bit more detail. I'm going to ask some other people to talk about their experience in a moment. But basically, Arts Council England will pay for access support for any of their funding programmes, and there's a range of different amounts, which I'll tell you in a bit. And yeah, so they will provide access support for note taking, interpreting ideas, to write up answers, helping to process the question forms, like I mentioned earlier, really, BSL interpretation, helping the applicant navigate Grantium, which, if anyone has encountered Grantium, is not a straightforward system. No matter how many times I do it, I still get stuck in a loop with the eligibility questionnaire and keep doing it again until I can remember the thing to click to get out of that and onto the next stage. It is not an easy system, and they acknowledge that, and that is one of the reasons why they put in quite significant access support should it be needed. So the things that they won't pay for in terms of access support is translations from other languages into English, any costs relating to caring responsibilities, costs covered by access to work, which is why I flagged that earlier, or any other sources. So they want to know if, you might get access support that will cover one bit of it but not the other, and you can kind of be quite open about that and say, look, I can get this much, but I really need X, or even if it's more time or whatever it is. So it's useful to be upfront about that. And they won't pay for support to develop the project. So it's not a bid writer or a development consultant. It is someone who's helping you to write the application in your words. So that's the thing they're really clear about. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to stop sharing my screen, so then it's easier to see the lovely people. I just use ones. Glad it's not me. I'm guessing that's the eligibility questionnaire. So we have people here who have had access support before, one of them from me, one of them from someone else, and someone who also provides access support. So I wanted to open it up. Frank, I don't know if you're happy to speak first about your experience about what access support was like for you, what kind of support you had from us.
So yeah, in my experience was that I didn't really realise that I could get access support. So firstly, I'd like to thank Lorna at CoLab and Emma at Wildworks Theatre for kind of pointing me out that I could do it. And then following on from that, Yvonne from Creative Black Country helping me to, and Lorna again helping me to find a list of people that I could potentially work with. And out of that came working with Jenny, who just happened to be available at the exact time that I needed her. So that was why I made the choice of Jenny, but it was a really good choice. And what Jenny did for us, what she did for me, was she did exactly what you want, which is to make the whole process accessible. Grantium isn't that accessible. other people on my team with all their faculties, you know, full 20/20 vision, they struggle with Grantium. So, you know, what Jenny did was, and the team there, Isaac as well, they kind of turn it into modules that you can cope with. They'll transfer things into Word documents that you can then fill in more easily, or find a platform that works with your accessibility on your laptop or whatever it is that you're using. So it's kind of a way of translating for you the world that you can't access into a world that you can, which sounds like an obvious thing to say, but you know, a lot of people don't realize that you need this help. A lot of us cope every day with things, and you know, people around us kind of think that we can just cope with anything, but we can't, and we do need help in order to use our skills and to shine, you know, our brilliance, I think, between all of us on the world. So yeah, to help me fill in the form, help me not in a way that was like, you know, telling me what to do, but allowing me to be me, to express my opinions, my views from my heart into that form in a really clear and concise way. And you know, there's things like word counts and all that kind of stuff that you've got to be aware of. But the process also was helped by Isaac was brilliant at just looking at what I was doing here and how my laptop was working and adjusting little things, showing me little plugins that I could put into Google or into Chrome to make it work with my accessibility settings, because not everything does work with your accessibility settings. So a good access support worker will pick up on little things that you're missing out on and little things that they can help you with. Having worked with Jenny, and on our first Arts Council application, we were successful and we got funding, which was brilliant. And then I've since, and again with the help of Yvonne, pointing me in the right directions, I found Sally Ann, who I now work with. And we've got a kind of a hybrid version with Sally Ann. I've hired her as administrative support and access support. And if you can find someone that's got both those skills, and in your funding application, in your budget, you've got lines for both those things. It's a really good way of doing it, in my opinion. Sally Ann is brilliant anyway. I don't want to go on too much about how brilliant she is, because I'd like to take up some more of her time if I can get some more funding. So, you know, but yeah, do use Sally Ann. She is brilliant. But yeah, as an administrator and an access support, it's the perfect combination, really. She's there to help me with all the things I can't do. And also there to help me with the administration, which I think is the fairest approach when you've got something like this. You can't expect your access support worker to do things for you. They're there to help you do things yourself, and that's the best way to be, because you don't want to lose yourself in access support. You want to keep your skills and keep your knowledge and keep your networks going. And a really good access support worker like Jenny and like Sally Ann will just help you to be you. And that's kind of where I'm at, and I'm really happy, and my life's a lot easier, and I can sleep at night, which is really good.
This is fantastic to hear, Frank. And I just wanted to kind of ask you, so did you put you used like Jenny as access support worker to help you do the application?
The Arts Council application, yeah.
And then did you actually put something extra in to your application to help you with the project that you've got the funding for?
Yeah, so Arts Council will allow you within your budget to have a percentage for access support, and also for roles within, you know, your budget. So I did put in for an administrative role, and I did put in for an access support. They're kind of separate things. You know, you get your fund, like let's say you bid in for up to £30,000. You get your £30,000 for all the things you need for your project. And then on top of that, as a separate thing, you can bid for access support.
Omar, did you have a question? Got a raised hand.
Yes, so the first thing, You talked about Grantium.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never heard of that before. Is that for sort of like businesses and how to get them funding and stuff, or is it like for other projects as well?
So if I just
Sort of a
backtrack,
general thing.
yeah, if I just backtrack a bit, the Arts Council, when you apply for funding and you realise that you can get access support, in my case, it was an easy email. I sent off an email to the support team. I explained who I was, what my disabilities were, and they got back to me and helped me and granted me some hours for access support. And then I hired Jenny, and Jenny showed me that the Arts Council funding goes through a system called Grantium. It's not the best system. It's very kind of, I don't know how you'd explain it, but it's very formy, and there's lots of things you have to click on and then go back, and it'll say do this and go back and do this and go back, and you get lost in it. But it is specific, I think, to Arts Council. It's just their way of interacting with you as somebody seeking funding. You have to fill out the form via the Grantium system with the Arts Council. I don't know if Jenny wants to add anything to that.
Yeah, no, that's right. It is, yeah, the Arts Council have this separate system, and it's a bit renowned in the arts sector because everyone dislikes it very much. It's basically because they brought in a system that was designed for something else and not designed for arts funding applications. So it's being kind of shifted and squeezed to fit and work. So it's not very accessible. So this is why the flip side is that Arts Council are very more proactive, I would say, in providing access support, because they're aware that their online system, which is called Grantium, is not accessible and is difficult to navigate. Yeah, that's what Grantium is. Sorry for using jargon. If I use any other jargon, please do stop and
So Jenny, as well, just and you might come on to do this, but right at the beginning, if someone was thinking of applying to the Arts Council, they might need the access support even to get onto the system to see if you're eligible.
Yeah, I'm going to go through I'm going to go in a bit more detail.
Yeah.
I'll have a little break first, but I'll go through more detail specifically about Arts Council, because there's a whole process, and I'll kind of clarify that. And I'll also share afterwards a Word version of what they ask on their online form for the access support request, so you'll get all of that. I was just going to invite Sakir to say a little bit about, because Sakir worked with someone called Amy Dalton Hardy, who is brilliant as well, and just about what your experience, if you've got anything to add from, because you had different kinds of access support, what that experience was for you, Sakir, if you're all right to talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, of course. So I had support from Amy, and that was looking at when I was doing the Arts Council funding. I did small segments. So like with an access support worker, they are able to make things into smaller pieces for you along your journey. So then you're able to understand what's required within that application form. And I would say, like, when you do have an access support worker, look at areas that you feel that you might be struggling with, and then they can work with you to build on that. But finding the authentic you to what your visions, what your dreams are within that application form are really, really helpful. And that did help onto my journey. But I have to say, like, in terms of the journey of the Arts Council funding, it was really, really great to work with the Creative Black Country and Jenny. I got the opportunity to work with Jenny and the Creative Black Country in the fellowship programme. So when you're applying for your Arts Council funding, these are all the amazing organisations to be able to work with along your journey, to be able to put them into your application form. And it is about that team building. It is about that journey together. And Arts Council like to see that in your application form as well, make that team building, and signpost each other together to create that, amazing opportunity. So but I can link to everything that Frank has said. So a lot of things do relate to what you've said. So I didn't want to repeat everything that's already been said.
Brilliant, thank you, Sophia. Omar, have you got another hand up, or is that the previous hand up?
Brilliant, thank you. That first question is answered. I appreciate that. So obviously if you're applying for any kind of project or whatever, once the funding is successful, whether that's, I don't know, 30,000, 50,000 or whatever, whether it's, maybe festivals or community events or anything like that, that's great. But can you then apply for, or you can then apply for separate access funding, can't you? So maybe if something happens and you need additional funding for access, or maybe you need additional interpreting support, or can you have that within a contract, or is that something you can agree before? Do you need to apply separately for additional funding? Like, how does that unexpected cost get covered?
Okay, so there's quite a lot in there. It depends on the funder first. I will use that Arts Council as an example, partly because I'm most familiar with them, so I know how they work. You need to check with the other funders, but with Arts Council, any personal access support needs that you have, they ask you to identify that separately to your project budget. And part of the reason for that is because they have ceilings of maximum amounts. So there's a program called Developing Your Creative Practice, which is specifically for individuals to develop their creative practice. Does what it says on the tin. And there's I think it's 12,000. I'm sorry, I should have checked that. I think it's 12,000 is the limit now. But if you require access support, they will allow you to put a request for the cost of that over and above that ceiling amount, so you're not disadvantaged by having to use some of that grant money for your personal access support. And the same with their wider fund, the project grants. They don't have such a hard ceiling well, they do have like £100,000 one, but there's like a £30,000 quicker turnaround, which is a bit of a glass ceiling for quite a few people, and quite a few people try and, especially your first application will be under that 30,000 limit. And again, you can add personal access support into that over and above that £30,000, and you'll still be considered a £30,000 bid. For the project grants, there may be a number of people in the team who require that personal access support. So I'll give an example of a partnership project I'm doing with Descope at the moment, and we are working with Ishtiaq as a VV consultant in that project, which is a performance. So for Ishtiaq to come and do that work with our performers, he requires 2 interpreters. One of them is Tanisha, and we put in personal access support costs for those 2 interpreters for Ishtiaq to come and do that. Now, making your project accessible to the wider public generally needs to be included in your project budget, because they expect everyone to do that, and it shouldn't be an over and above. It should be core to what you do. That's also me. That's something I feel as well. So in that same project, we are paying for a BSL interpreter for each of the performances, and the budget for that we put into the main £30,000 budget. So there's 2 separate things. There is something around you having, or your team having, access costs that aren't covered if you don't get access to work, and that aren't covered by that, and you can put that in over and above. but anything that is about making it accessible to the people who are going to experience what you do has to be factored in within your plans and within your budget. You were kind of, it seemed like you were also asking about if something else happens. Again, generally, the other advice is to always have a contingency in your budget. It could be 3 to 5% of your overall budget, generally. So it's advised that you always put in. So if you're going to have a £30,000 budget, I can't do maths. I'm going to make it up as a 1,500. Don't judge me. Let's say that is 3 to 5%. So you would have a £28,500 project budget, and you'd have £1,500 that is a contingency that you haven't allocated to anything. So then if something does go wrong, you need an extra person, you need an extra something. That might be it might be an access thing that you haven't thought of, or it could be something breaks and you have to replace it. It could be anything. But yeah, it's worth having that in there as well. But that has to, again, come out of your overall budget. So is that answered your question? Is that clear? Yeah. Cool.
Clear,
Has
thank
anyone
you.
else got any more? Thank you.
Jenny,
Does
do we
anyone
want,
else-
sorry, I was just going to say, do we want a quick
break.
comfort break for 5 minutes?
No, it's up. Okay. So, as with the other funders, I've put contact details on the slides. So with Arts Council, there is an online form to request access support. You can get assistance from Arts Council to submit that form. So you can ring them up or email them and ask them to arrange a session with you to fill in that form. So you can do that if that's not accessible to you. As an access support worker, I quite often help somebody complete that form in order to apply for me to work with them on access support. Not all access support will be able to do that, because essentially that's free work because you can't be paid for that bit because you haven't applied yet. So some access supporters might be happy to do that, some might not. So I'm not going to say that that's a standard thing, but that's what I do. It's not a big, long, complex form, and you do have to have a conversation if you have a support worker about, you know, breaking down that support anyway to put into that form. So yeah, with their application. So what I will do as well is I've shared it with Yvonne. So Yvonne will share with you a Word document version of that online form, so you can see in advance what the questions are that they will ask, so you can prepare all of that and get that ready for when then you go onto the online form, if you're happy to do it yourself without them giving you the support. But even if you want to call them and ask, it's useful for you to know what they're going to ask you. And there's different questions depending on what application funding, what kind of funding stream you're applying for, and whether or not you have a support worker. So all of that is in that. I hope it's clear in that Word form. It's quite complicated because it's like, if it's this, then it's this questions, and if it's this, then it's this question. But yeah, if you need any clarification on that, please do get in touch. So they will ask you to describe the barriers you experience in making funding applications and your access needs. And I have had them come back to me before and ask for more information, because I work to the social model of disability. I have only described what it is that somebody needs support for, and haven't necessarily given the medical diagnosis for that person, because I believe if you're making things accessible, that's not what you need to know. However, the Arts Council do want to know that. So you do, they do expect you to disclose that information about yourself and about your disability or your mental health or whatever it is. They do ask for some information about that. It's up to you how much detail you go into, but they do ask for that. And then they want to know the barriers you experience. So what things will be challenging for you in terms of making the application. if you don't have a support worker, they will try and find one. They've just starting to pilot having a small network of access support workers. So on that form, you can tick, if you don't have somebody already, you can tick that you want to have someone. If you have got one, they want you to provide their details and the breakdown of the support they'll provide and what the fees are. So yeah, as I said, you can ask your support worker to provide that information, and they might also help you with the form, depending on who it is. The Arts Council have recently, very recently, because it wasn't there the last time I looked, and it was there when I prepared this, put a lot more information about applying for access support and made it much, much clearer. When I first started doing this, you just had to send an email and guess what they might want to know. And then it got a bit more specific and there were some bullet points. But then, depending on who answered the email, you might get different questions back. But now it is much more clear. The online form is really much more specific. And there is help on there. There's help for if you are an artist applying, and there's help if you are a support worker. So you could direct someone, if you've got someone who you might want to do the support work for you, and they're not sure, they can go and look on this and see what their role would be and what the Arts Council expect as well. So it's really good now, the information that's on there, so it's worth going on and having a look at that. So they have different levels of support. Oh, thing's not there it is. So depending on what funding pot you're applying to, they allow you to apply for a different level of funds in terms of the access support. So for developing your creative practice, which is for individuals who want to develop a specific strand of their practice or their work or their art form, you can apply for up to £600 in access support. For an under £30,000 National Lottery project grant, it's up to £900. If it's over 30,000, they say up to £1,200. And if you're resubmitting because you've probably done some of the work already and you're just reworking, that's up to 600. And if there's one of their special programs which requires an expression of interest, they're usually big, so they say up to 1,500. Now they do say that if you've talked to your access support worker and you need more than that, and you're clear on why, you can go to them and make that case. But this is generally the guide. So this is great because they never used to give you this, so this is new. So it's much, much clearer. So the day rate should reflect the skills and experience of the support worker, and they're saying it should be no more than £300 a day. It could be less than that. So generally, just to give you an idea, for developing your creative practice, I provide 3 days of support, so it's £200 a day, and that's how I kind of break that down, just so just to give you an idea. But yeah, if the support worker is higher than that rate, but it's very specific, then again you can go and make that case to them and explain. But they might ask you to get other quotes if they're not happy with that argument. And also obviously you've got to make the breakdown of how you're going to spend this money, but it could be different, or you could end up not applying for the grant and stopping halfway through. So if that happens, you just need to go back and communicate, or the support worker needs to go back, communicate to the Arts Council and say we got so far with the application and then we've decided not going to apply or want to do something different or whatever it is. So for example, we might start doing a creative practice, do ICP, and then say, actually, this is a project grant, it's bigger than this and we need a bit more time. You could go back to the Arts Council and say, we want to do this now, but we need another couple of days of support. And, they'll look at that and that will be fine. So they're happy to do that. So yeah, they just want you to communicate with them. The people in the access support team are helpful. So it's definitely worth communicating with them. So on the spot. In terms of finding a support worker, this can actually be quite challenging, and also lots of people aren't sure or clear. It's very clear if what you need is BSL, you need a BSL interpreter, and someone who can do that BSL interpretation and then transcribe for you. So that's really clear. But if you're neurodivergent and you just find it really difficult to, you know, even start to engage with the process, it can be quite difficult to understand who that might be. But it can be anyone. It doesn't have to be an experienced or professional support worker. You might need that, and that might be really helpful for you, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. And you can usually choose the person that provides the support to you. There's some cases like BFI have got their specific organisation that they work with, but generally the onus is also on you. Some of them will help you find that person, and some won't. Some will expect you to just find the person. So whoever it is, it's really helpful if they're familiar with the arts funding system. But they can also contact the funder for advice. So they can go to the Arts Council and ask advice and clarification on the meaning of certain things. But the support worker needs to be able and capable of going through all of the guidance and information that is available and understanding that and being able to translate that to you. So that's the important thing. If they're really experienced at working and doing stuff in the funding system, that's helpful, but it might not be necessary for the specific support you need. So it is all about you and what you need, basically. So yeah, it can be a little bit daunting to go, well, how do I find someone? But if all you need is someone to take notes for you and make sure you get it under word count or something like that, then it might be a colleague or someone that you've worked with, or it doesn't have to be a specialist support worker. However, I can give you some people who are support workers and arts organisations that have support workers, if you are looking for somebody. So again, this will be sent out, the links are here. So Amy Dalton Hardy, we've mentioned. Sakia had support from her. She's based over in Warwickshire. Sally Ann, who you've met today. Amanda Graham, I think she's still in Worcestershire. Nighttime Economy Solutions do a lot of access support. Hijinks are a theatre company who also provide access support. The Tape Community Music and Film, they're based in Wales. They really only specifically do that BFI support, but they can provide general as well. So it's possibly worth getting in touch with them, but they did get back to me like just this morning and say that they really only work with BFIs, but they're on there anyway. And Curiosity Productions, I don't always have the capacity to provide access support. I don't like to do it if I know that I'm not going to be able to dedicate enough time to it at the time that it's needed. So at the moment, I'm saying I'm not doing the next round of DYCP, for example, the Arts Council's developing creative practice, because I know at the time the deadline is, I will be delivering some holiday activities. So, but there are times in the year when I do have that capacity, and I will provide that support as well, but can also signpost to other people like I've just listed. So there's links to everybody's websites on there that, again, you'll get all of this. We've covered this a bit already because of Omar's brilliant questions. So just to flag, in addition to getting the access support to actually get the application, don't forget to add your personal access costs in when you make your application. And as I mentioned and hopefully explained, if it's personal access costs, it won't be counted as part of your application total. The other thing I didn't clarify, another reason why that's useful, is that generally funders require an amount of match funding Arts Council, there's kind of a general rule of 10%. So if you're applying for £30,000, you need £3,000 match funding. If your access support added another £5,000 to that, if it was counted, you'd need £3,500 match funding, but you don't because it's not counted within the overall project money. So that's the other reason it's important that it's separate, and that's why that's a really positive thing. So it's always worth checking the guidance for what you can include in personal access costs. Some funders will allow for kind of specific equipment or things like that, others won't. You might be able to get specific equipment from a grant from Access to Work instead. So it's worth kind of looking at all of that and looking at what you need. And as I mentioned earlier, making your project accessible for the public, for the people who are going to experience it, needs to be included in your main application budget. So that is counted within the main budget. So that is the main things. So that's my contact details. If you have any questions following up from this session, please do get in touch. I'm really happy to help when I can. If you email me, I can't promise an instant answer. If I'm deep in delivering a festival or holiday activities or whatever it is, I am not going to be at my desk, but I will try and get back to you as soon as I can. And I'm really happy to have WhatsApp or text messages, can be voice notes, whatever works for you. I'm happy to work with your communication needs. So yeah, do get in touch. And then the other thing to say is please give us feedback. Yvonne's going to share a link to Arts Council not so accessible online form, as we've discussed. However, they have to do that because it's part of their funding, so it has to be on their system, this very specific thing. But if you have any comments, if you could put it in the chat, if you want to email either Yvonne or myself with any specific feedback, really appreciate any feedback about how this could be improved. It's the first time I've delivered this specific presentation, so that's useful for me. So yeah, please do give us feedback in whatever way you would like to. And I do want to just flag that there is a session. I'm going to stop sharing. There is a session that I just saw this morning on social media from China Plate, which is about the social model of disability and creating access riders. And China Plate are bringing in Unlimited, who are brilliant. I've learned everything about access riders from them. They're really, really great. Highly recommend it. I think it's Saturday the 6th of July, but I'm just going to find the link now and I'll pop that in the chat for you.
Thanks so much, Jenny.
Yeah, open to you in terms of questions.
I think, Alf, did you have your hand up?
No, I'm good. I've taken it down. It's fine.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Thanks for that. Appreciate it.
Did anyone else have any comments or questions or anything that you'd like us to go over, or anybody who'd like to jump in with an experience as well? Please do go ahead. Omar, were you asking a question or? No. Okay. So yes, we've got about 5 minutes left.
Learned a lot today, so thank you. About the accessibility support and different organisations as well. So thank you. Yeah.
That's a pleasure. Thank you.
And know who to contact as well, know where to go to for the right support. If I struggle with anything, I know where to go now and who to contact, like yourself, CBC and other organisations that you've mentioned. So yeah, fantastic. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma.
Yes, I think please do kind of share this message as well, that you can get help if you need it to put in applications. I was talking to an organisation, two artists at the beginning of the year who'd put in an Arts Council application and it declined. So they'd come back to me to kind of read through, you know, can you give us some pointers? And we had a good, I don't know, probably an hour's conversation. And at the end of it, the artist said, you know, oh, I just find it so hard with my neurodiversity. And I was like, oh, so did you get help? They didn't get help. They didn't know anything about it. They'd already put in their application, done all of that work and not realised. And actually, then I had that question about, well, if you resubmit, can you get the help now if you to resubmit it? Which I think they did. So it's just good to share the, you know, just share the message really. And I'd always ask the question, because even if a funder doesn't have any help, you would have sown that seed, hopefully, that you know, maybe that's something that you should think about, and it will help kind of just make everything a lot better for everybody. So yes.
I think it's just worth saying as well that the terms of what access support means and what access support needs are is actually really broad, and Arts Council are really great with their definition of it. So, you know, it doesn't have to be like a physical disability or a, you know, perhaps like a standard, what we might think of as disability. There are loads of different things that can pose barriers, and that's what it's about. It's, do you have a barrier to applying for this funding? It could be a mental health condition. You may have like depression or anxiety. That is a real barrier to funding, because it, you know, if you have like any sort of mental illness, that can just stop you from applying, and you might just need somebody who you can have a chat to for a few days a week while you're doing your application, to sort of like chiver you along or just give you encouragement, help you to overcome a challenge that might make you give up. So it's just worth thinking for yourselves, but also for other people who you're talking to who are applying for funding, that the, you know, the terms around access support are probably lots wider than what you think. I mean, I'm neurodivergent myself. I had no idea that I could have you know, got help applying for my own funding, for example, if I'd have needed it. I didn't feel that I did need it, but you know, being neurodivergent poses very specific barriers to a lot of the way that the systems are designed. So yeah, it's just worth sort of like broadening out your terms of what you think access support is and who needs it and who qualifies for it.
Absolutely, thanks, Sally-Ann. Yeah, I did actually provide access support to someone, and the main thing was around anxiety, based around repeated rejection and having a real barrier of, even like she couldn't go on granting because it was too triggering. So it was just about like you know, being able to do that and go through that process and having someone to support, and you know, that reassurance to go, yeah, you have answered that question. So yeah, absolutely, it's really broad, and the systems are set up in a really specific way that suits certain kinds of brains and certain ways of thinking and doing. And yeah, it's just about finding someone whose brain can work with that to help you articulate yourself, as Frank said so beautifully. It's just like helping you be your best self and use the skills you have. So yeah, absolutely. But the good thing is that acknowledgement is there, and that support is there and it is available. I just don't think it's always really well communicated. As I said, it's just got much better on the Arts Council website. It was quite even difficult, it was quite inaccessible to get access support before, but they have put some really good guidance on there now, so that's helping as well. But yeah, hopefully this information will You know, I wasn't aware of some of the funders. I just went to them all and went, right, who does actually do this? So it was interesting to do that bit of research as well about other funders that are starting to provide that support as well. So
yeah, and thank you for that, Jenny. Thank you. And just also to say, we do have, you know, here on this call and in our region, fantastic support workers. So do get in touch with Jenny, Sally Ann, and Amy, who's in Warwickshire, are the ones that I know of and have kind of worked with. But there are others, as Jenny explained. So yeah, get in touch with them. So
can I just ask before we go?
Yes.
Sally and I are looking for BSL interpreters at the moment for a project. So we're looking for quotes. The people on this chat who can do BSL, would they be happy for Yvonne or Jenny to share their contact details with us, just because we're looking for quotes around the area and we need more people to ask, really?
Okay, I can ask Tanisha and Tom after we've done this, Frank, and maybe put you in touch.
Thank you.
yeah, and
Okay.
Defscope are a BSL provider as well. So Tanisha's come through Defscope.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I always go to them first.
I'm just going to stop recording now.